This is not stuff you like, but you can still call me Ursa, and this is Revenge of the Script. Now, some of you may remember me live tweeting the Star Wars prequels when I watched them to prepare for this episode. Yeah, some of you are really, really enamored with my nerd rage. Looking at you, Steve. But you see, the only thing I remembered before the rewatch was that I really, really hated something about it, and I couldn't remember what it was, but I remembered that it made me mad. Like, much madder than you should be. But knock me down with a feather if I didn't actually enjoy the first 30 minutes. In terms of time, Revenge of the Sith has more minutes of movie which I enjoyed than the other two prequels do. Though there's still that romance. I mean, it's a bit better?
No. No, it's because I'm so in love with you.
So love has blinded you.
But better isn't the same as good. Yeah. The plot of Revenge of the Sith, it goeth thusly. Chancellor Palpatine has been kidnapped by Count Dooku, remember him? And General Grievous. While rescuing Palpatine, Obi-Wan gets knocked out and Anakin beheads Dooku. He is conflicted about this. Also, Palpatine wants Anakin on the Jedi Council, but the Masters refuse to let him be a Master, and this is starting to sound a little bit like Pokemon. And because apparently galactic contraception cannot stand up to Jedi sexing, Padme is pregnant. Not just like regular pregnant with twins pregnant, which she apparently doesn't know until she's actually giving birth because they don't have ultrasounds in space. Regardless, Anakin starts having nightmares about her dying in childbirth, and if you remember the last time he started having nightmares about a woman he knew and was close to dying, you know where this is going, and it's nowhere good. There are some shenanigans, which I will come back to. Anakin becomes a Sith Lord, and Palpatine orders all the Jedi killed, including the children, and Anakin force chokes his wife half to death and then gets chopped to bits by Obi-Wan, but not enough to kill him, and then he lives and some kids are born and Padme dies and there's some Narm and boom, Darth Vader, Galactic Empire, come back in 18 or 19 years for the beginning of A New Hope so the kids can sort this mess out. So let's talk about writing. When you're making a movie, the writing is really important and it has to do a lot of jobs. You have to have snappy dialogue and you have to have logic. You have to have things which are inferred by the audience because you don't want them to feel like you're spoon feeding them, but then again, you don't want to have things be too subtle because otherwise the people who are a little bit slower on the uptake aren't gonna get them at all. So it's a tricky line to walk. Also, you have to make the dialogue sound like actual conversations people would actually have, which is trickier than it sounds. An example of where this doesn't work in the original trilogy is where Luke is talking to Owen Lars.
He died about the same time as your father.
You knew my father?
What? Why would you infer that from them dying at the same time, Luke? That doesn't make any sense. Although that being said, it does actually sound like a conversation that some people have, because in my experience, quite a lot of people aren't actually listening to the words coming out of your mouth. Their brain is just kind of scanning them for key phrases. Right, but like I said in Attack of the Clones, if you have actors who have good chemistry, then you can kind of get away with clunky dialogue, but only to a point. The reason I found the average scene in Revenge of the Sith more fun, or at least less trying than the other two prequels, is because people are doing things. Like, they're advancing the plot through dialogue, but they're also advancing the plot by piloting starships, or whatever. There's a lot less sitting and talking and standing and talking and walking in straight lines and talking. You want the dialogue to be moving the plot forward while at the same time other interesting things are going on. Case in point, the pod race on Tatooine is incredibly long but doesn't really advance the plot very much. If the pod race were 5 minutes long, or 10 minutes long, or 15 minutes long, or 20 minutes long, it would carry the same amount of plot-related information. Anakin is very good at pod racing. He wins the pod race. Woo. But writing is not just dialogue, it's also making the story coherent. The two things I found most inconsistently handled were the two most vital things for the continuity of the story. One, why is Darth Vader Darth Vader? And two, what happened to, Luke and Leia's mother? Especially considering that Leia apparently remembers her mother. Okay, so let us stipulate that I'm willing to buy that Anakin is 1. Increasingly disenchanted with the Jedi. Reasonable. 2. Terrified of losing his wife. Entirely understandable. 3. Tempted by the power offered by Palpatine. Okay, fine, but you still have to get us from point A to point Sith in a logical fashion, and that would either require 4A, Anakin having dropped 50 IQ points because of the influence of the dark side, or 4B, Anakin being dumber than a rock. Let me explain. About halfway through the movie, Anakin goes to Palpatine to give him an update on how Obi-Wan is fighting General Grievous, because if General Grievous can be killed, then the war is effectively over. Palpatine smarms a bit about how the Jedi are excluding Anakin, how they don't trust him, and offers to teach Anakin the ways of the dark side. And Anakin is like, What? Palpatine even knows that he's been having visions of his wife's death, and that he has a wife in the first place, and that it's Padme. Palpatine knows everything is what I'm saying here. So Anakin has previously been suspicious of the Jedi and thinking that they're not really on the level, which is entirely understandable, especially given the Jedi's recent actions and how Palpatine has kind of been pushing him towards that by the things he says to him. But he now knows that Palpatine is a Sith Lord, and he also knows, because Obi-Wan said this on screen, that Palpatine has stayed in office beyond his term and that Obi-Wan feels that something is up with that. So naturally, Anakin goes to Mace Windu and says, Shaft, this guy is a Sith Lord. He's not going to give up power. What are we going to do? And Windu says, well, we'll have to arrest him. I will go deal with it. You stay here because you are too conflicted about this to be any use to me. That is not what happens. He does briefly do what he's told, and there's a pretty good scene where we let John Williams do the talking and everybody stares out the blue screen windows looking anxious or teary or determined or all three. Then Anakin goes to confront Palpatine, who has already killed 3 Jedi who are presumably just kind of lying on the floor there, but has also been overpowered sort of by Windu, who's trying to arrest him. Trying. And this is where it all starts to go to the stupid. If we just had Anakin arrives, Mace Windu decides that Palpatine is too dangerous to live and tries to kill him, and Anakin is all conflicted about this, and then Anakin says, no, you can't kill him, I need him alive, he needs to be alive, because, you know, Padme. Windu says, no, I'm not going to do that, and Anakin decides that he needs to stop Windu from killing him, and then Windu dies, and Anakin's all, no, what have I done, and then decides to hitch his wagon to Palpatine because he needs to save Padme more than anything else in the world. That would work. But no, we have this whole other plot thread stuck in there with no structural backing whatsoever, and when you mix it in with the wanting to keep Padme alive Sith plot, it doesn't make any sense. They are in fact mutually exclusive. Let me show you.